The Liberal Party of Canada and a few different provinces are considering banning young people under the age of 16 from social media and AI chatbots. And while the impulse to restrict young people from these spaces is understandable, given our increased concern about their well being and the fact that these platforms are designed to grab our attention and keep us on them for as long as possible, bans and restrictions may not be the simple or straightforward response we hope them to be. In fact, the evidence on age based restrictions is incredibly inconclusive, and the science is pointing in two directions at once. On the one hand, we have studies with youth ages 11 to 13 who have devices and access to these platforms that is demonstrating that they're performing equally well, if not better than their peers, on almost all markers of health and well being. At the same time, and on the other hand, studies with the same age cohort of youth are demonstrating increased risk for obesity, sleep deprivation, and other mental health markers. So, when the science is moving in two directions at once and the evidence base feels this inconclusive, making sweeping legislative decisions feels risky. An important consideration when it comes to age based restrictions are the potential unintended consequences or backfire effects of these kinds of policies. We're learning from the early days of contexts like Australia and the ban that's taking place there that young people are finding ways to circumvent those policies, and they're being pushed into even less safe and less regulated spaces online. When young people feel like they have to circumvent the rules, they're even less likely to turn to adults when they experience negative challenges online or to ask for help. So, when it comes to these kinds of policies, we need to think critically about the potential to erode trust between young people and the adults they typically turn to for support. Age based bans and restrictions also do not do anything to hold platforms and corporations accountable for the kinds of design choices that have created unsafe and unhealthy places for our children to be in the first place. In fact, what we're learning in the early days in contexts like Australia are that age based restrictions are happening on a day to day level within families and households. These are negotiations that are taking place between parents and teenagers, and they don't do anything to hold platforms accountable for the kinds of design choices that created unsafe and unhealthy places for our children to be in the first place. Age-based restrictions treat all screen time and all young people as the same, and for a long time, substantial amounts of research have shown they are not. These kinds of policies cannot differentiate between a young person who is being sucked into an algorithmically recommended content spiral that's resulting in negative social comparison, and a young person who's featuring their cooking skills or learning how to play guitar by watching videos online. With these kinds of policies, we run the risk of losing the benefits in the name of trying to mitigate for risks that we can't even be sure we're doing well. And we know that this is particularly important for young people from marginalized or vulnerable communities who turn to online spaces for support. I think what all this momentum around, wanting to restrict young people from social media platforms is demonstrating is a huge appetite in and amongst Canada for action to ensure that the places and spaces our children and young people are engaging in are safe and healthy. MediaSmarts has been advocating for a national strategy for digital media literacy for over a decade now. What we need is a strategy that does three things. First, invests in research. While our concerns about youth well-being are at an all-time high, the ability to fully understand these challenges with and alongside young people is very hard to come by. We need to invest in research so that we can build an evidence base that will allow us to be confident in the kind of regulatory decisions we're making and to be sure that the interventions we are mobilizing are going to have a meaningful impact. Second, we need to place regulatory onus and responsibility on companies and platforms that are making the design choices for the spaces and places that our young people are engaging in. This would include duty of care obligations around things like algorithmic and AI transparency, as well as ensuring safety and well-being by design, and consequences for companies and corporations who do not meet those duty of care obligations. Finally, we need to invest in digital media literacy education for children and youth, yes, but also for their parents, caregivers, educators, and broader communities. We're hearing from educators who are managing incredible challenges in the classroom. On the one hand, mitigating bans and devices in the classroom, while also ensuring that our children have the critical digital skills to face a digital future. We need to invest in digital media literacy skills for all people in Canada so that we can all use digital tools confidently and safely. Canada has a unique opportunity to step into a leadership role and chart a different path forward when it comes to ensuring children and youth are safe online. One that is grounded in evidence so that we can feel confident that the regulatory decisions we are making and the interventions we are mobilizing are effective. One that places regulatory responsibility on corporations to ensure the spaces and places our children are engaging in online are safe and healthy. And finally, then invests in digital media literacy education so that all people in Canada can use digital tools confidently and safely.